Hey gang, did you ever have one of those days only to go back later and realize it wasn't really one of those days after all? Let's dive in. I was in line at the store waiting to pay for a few items when the woman two people in front of me dropped a $20 bill and didn't realize it. The customer behind her brought it to her attention, picked up the bill and handed it back to her. Instead of being happy, grateful, and relieved, the owner of the 20 simply rolled her eyes, groaned, and said, "It's been one of those days." No thank you, no grateful sigh of relief after this nice person had returned her money. Just, "It's been one of those days." Suddenly the attitude of the woman who returned the dropped money, who had previously seemed chipper, friendly, and bouncy, not sure what bouncy means, you had to be there, changed. Her facial expression turning into that chagrined, "I know what you mean" smirk, like someone had just told her to stop acting chipper, friendly, and bouncy because if she didn't, she might make everyone else feel chipper, friendly, and bouncy even if they didn't want to. Now, it looked like she too was thinking about some things that could make her day qualify as one of those days, even though it didn't appear she was having one of those days. Then, the just one of those days stench drifted back to me, a heretofore unattached, disinterested observer of this little exchange. And when it, the stench, did drift back to me, I started to think about some things that had happened thus far in my day, and it made me think to myself, am I having one of those days too? Now, I'm not sure this is an example of the power of suggestion, but it did show how one comment, one idea, one simple thought or act, even our body language, can instantly change someone else's perspective. I mean, if Careless Carol hadn't been, well, careless by dropping money all over the place, she wouldn't have had occasion to utter the words, "It's been one of those days," to the woman who helped, the chipper, friendly, bouncy one, who in turn wouldn't have heard that phrase and therefore wouldn't have started thinking about all those things that were suddenly turning her day into one of those days. Same goes for me. Just observing all that automatically changed my attitude. Because as soon as I heard Careless Carol say, "It's one of those days," I started to think, hell lady, you think you're having one of those days? You didn't even lose that 20. Somebody pointed it out to you and gave it back. You want a one of those days story? Let me tell you about mine. Thing is, up to that point I wasn't even having one of those days. Fact is, I was having a perfectly fine day, so I'm not sure why I sullied it by letting this person change my outlook. So I didn't. I caught myself. Made a slight correction, like when you're driving in winter and you hit a slippery patch and for a second you think, oh crap, we're going in the ditch, but then you calmly take your foot off the gas and the brake and let the car straighten itself out and you're back on course. And moved on with my day. My perfectly fine day. But that didn't stop me from thinking about the phrase, "it's one of those days." And while I guess we all know the intent and meaning of the term, I tried to find an official definition. The best I could do was in the Oxford Online Dictionary, which states that the term refers to a day when things go wrong. Well, if that's all it takes to turn a perfectly fine day into one of those days, then I'm generally having one of those days within like 6 minutes of getting out of bed every morning. Example, 5:06 a.m., trying to turn off my alarm, I accidentally turn up the volume on the radio, waking everyone. 5:08 a.m., trip over a wash basket that somehow crept into our room overnight. 5:11 a.m., toothbrush slips and I jam it onto the inside of my cheek, causing great pain but no lasting injury. Anyway, there's your several things that could define one of those days for me, and I've only been conscious for like 3 minutes. But if we let that be the definition for one of those days, then every day would be just one of those days, wouldn't it? Here's another quasi-hypothetical situation, because all these things happen to me all the time, just probably not in this order. 8:18 a.m., spill coffee on my shirt, swearing ensues. 9:41 a.m., hit my head on the car door, happens all the time, I need to slow down. 2:36 p.m., misplaced my keys, I know, should put them in the same place every time. Just one of those days, right? It's no mystery that we start to believe or become what we think or talk about. And I believe as soon as we say or hear someone else say it's been one of those days, there's a good chance we'll find a way to make our day one of those days as well. Now, if Oxford is correct, and why wouldn't it be? It's freaking Oxford. If one of those days is defined by several things going wrong, then I'd submit to you that describes a typical normal day in the life of any of us. Fact is, if only several things go wrong, in other words, all that happens is I forget to use deodorant, I bite my tongue because I'm eating too fast, and there's a long line at the DMV, then I'd say that's a pretty darn good day, wouldn't you? So I think we should turn this whole thing around, redefine just one of those days, and start to celebrate all the good things that happen. Example, 8:19 a.m. Enjoyed a cup of coffee without spilling it. First time in a long time. 10:58 a.m. Boss gave me a compliment. He still doesn't know my name, but whatever. 12:42 p.m. Had lunch with a friend, and we sat outside. Never a bad thing. 2:38 p.m. I found my keys. They were in my pocket, but nonetheless. 4:04 p.m. Helped another by picking up a $20 bill she had dropped and gave it back to her. Just one of those days. Well, that feels better, doesn't it? So let's do it. Let's redefine one of those days. You up for it? I think I am. Till next time.